There are a ton of risks. There are a ton of risk, and there are a ton of hiccups and bumps on the way, but we handle all of that. Same with an operator. Whenever you're investing into a syndication, there are a ton of fires that the operator has to put out. They just don't tell you about it. They want you to enjoy the ride. So that's how we all operate.
To the Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
Welcome back, alternative asset investors. In part one of this interview, we learned about the exciting world of investing passively in mature e-commerce companies, something which has provided Benjamin's investors with capital preservation, risk mitigation, and hefty monthly cash flows. He covers the entire process from building the business to selling it to an investor, which could be you, to the disposition of the business. Here is the exciting part two of our interview with Benjamin Cohen, where we learn more about how you can get a piece of the action, either as an investor or through bringing your investors directly to Benjamin. If you have the opportunity to sit down, you will definitely want to find this episode on YouTube so that you can see the numbers and watch Benjamin as he walks you through the technology behind building and maintaining these businesses. Even more importantly, he walks you through the pitfalls and how his technology helps to bridge the gap. You'll definitely want to listen to the end of this episode to hear Benjamin's great suggestions on capital raising. And as always, if you're interested in investing in real estate without having to deal with the tenants, termites, and tantrums, you can head over to www.horizonmultifamily.com to learn more about investing passively in commercial real estate. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. I hope we haven't lost all our syndicators if you're still online. I believe you do have many of your clients are syndicators. I mean, these are people who obviously understand alternative assets. In most cases, or many cases, they are going to be accredited. I mean, it just seems like a picture perfect opportunity. So what are some of the things you can do for people who have that sort of private equity background who can raise capital? What are some other ways you can partner?
Yeah, excellent. So this legally, e-commerce is not an asset class. This is not an investment. You are buying a business. So we are not under the umbrella of the SEC, which has been great for now. Our long-term vision is to actually turn this into a legitimate, securitized, institutionalized asset class or a financial product. I think the last time we've seen a financial product, besides crypto, which everyone has their opinions of crypto, I would say the REIT in the 1980s, whenever the government finally securitized that. So that's our vision for the company. Once we get to 150 businesses under management, we're at 98 right now, then we will go institutional. We'll be raising only equity from fund to funds. In the short term, let's say the next year,
right? Most
of my clients are real estate syndicators. I have a hedge fund. I have all walks of life. I have normal mom and pops. I have doctors, lawyers, really just depends on who the entity is. But for our real estate syndicators, I've saw this opportunity and it's glared in my face over the last 3 to 6 months that, especially now in a time when it's very hard to raise capital for real estate deals, a lot of syndicators are either sitting on discretionary capital that needs to be allocated so they can actually find yield for their investors, or they just can't raise, which is another issue for a lot of syndicators right now and wealth fund managers in the real estate space. So the way I've structured this is a lot of people are skeptical, which I completely understand. George, you've been in the space longer than I have, but this is not about numbers. This is about trust, and this is a relationship business. So usually to bridge that gap and bridge that trust for a syndicator and their investors, usually they put their hand on the fire first and they buy their own business, test it out, see the distributions for their own eyes. Usually takes about 45 to 60 days to start seeing your first profit distributions. And then once it's profitable within 60 days and you're making anywhere between $3,000 to $8,000 a month, they go to their investor base and they say, hey, there could be like a 506B offering here with Reg D associated with it. And then they can either bring on multiple clients with them under one LLC. One LLC is applying for, let's say, 10 businesses. And I deal with the syndicator as the point of contact. So all the distribution. Okay.
I want to dig into that. So you're saying that this is not regulated by the SEC because you're buying the entire business.
Correct.
And so there's no reason why you absolutely have to work with only accredited investors. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you could, because it's just like buying a laundromat, for example. You don't have to show accredited status to go buy a laundromat, right? I mean, you can go out either directly, or you could, just to name another business that creates great cash on cash. I've been out there looking, car washes, laundromats, but I didn't really want to run a car wash or a laundromat.
I don't want to either.
That's one of the reasons I think we're talking today, because I
Yeah.
never did get my hugely cash flowing business out there. So correct. Okay. Interesting. I mean, as a personal thing, I think I might prefer to bring only accredited investors into it, but
Yeah.
good to make the distinction that you don't absolutely need that. Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Definitely. You want to work with syndicators or anybody in private equity, people who are putting in their own capital first. Risk your own capital, make sure you know what you're doing before you do it,
Yeah.
and bring outside investors into it.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Let me just see. You know what? If you want to do a screen share, I'd love to see if you can show. Could you show an actual business?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to be very careful with what I show you guys because this is proprietary information. I can't show you too much because I did sign an NDA and a non-compete, and I have to get permission from investors to show back-end, not investors, excuse me, clients, for the back-end info. But I can show you the front end of or a dashboard of a current performing business, and I can also show a P&L statement of when we were scaling the business. Like I remember whenever we're building a business from scratch, we put about 40K into it. I can show you a P&L of our offering when we putting it.
So this is a business you haven't sold yet. So this could be like coats in Norway.
Something like
some of those swimsuits in Italy, whatever you want to sell.
Yes. So it's all backed by data, quantitative and qualitative data. So usually our clients are like, oh, I think this is going to work, or I feel like I really want to sell this. I'm sorry, we go based on logic and data. This is not feelings here. Listen to us. We're the experts. We'll manage it for you. You just sit back and enjoy the distribution. So if coats in Norway is the best, it is. If it's sweaters, we go with sweaters. It's just backed by data.
Well, actually, you know what that reminds me? I think there's a Norwegian saying that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing.
It's cold as crap over there, so you have to have good clothing to be there. But okay, so I'll share my screen. This business here is a stabilized business, so this is actually currently operating. This is about 8 months old because it started in September of last year, I believe, or October of last year, I believe. So it's a little bit 7, 8. This is what a stabilized business looks like within the first 6 months of acquisition for a client. This is on Shopify. So before I go into this, most of us, when we broke into real estate, our goal was to build generational wealth for ourselves, for our families, and for our investors, using real estate as the asset class per se. And most of us use multifamily, hospitality, development, Airbnb, retail, car wash, whatever the heck it is, as the vehicle to get us to our end goal, which is generational wealth, right? In e-commerce, in this industry, digital business, the vehicles to get us to our end goal, which is generational wealth, is Shopify, Wix, WooCommerce, WordPress, GoDaddy, Amazon, Facebook. Any intermediary is actually preferred, not a marketplace store like Amazon, Facebook. I can explain that in a minute, but in any intermediary software where we can launch a business online and utilize it as an omni-channel presence. So the vehicles we use mainly is Wix, Shopify, WordPress. In this case, most of our businesses are Shopify because it's just the most user-friendly. But so, okay, just to give that quick background, this is the industry we're in. Shopify is our multifamily, if you want to analogize it to real estate. Now, anyways, so this is a Shopify business. This business is actually physically located in Venice, Italy. This is how it's performed in the last 90 days. The reason why it's in euros is because it's in Venice, Italy. Excuse me. So this business generated let's just say $610,000 in gross revenue, assuming the exchange rate of 1.10 euro. So just to be simple for math's sake, 610,000. So I'm going to pull up my calculator, 610K. I can't show you the live P&L statement for this one because this is a live business, but 610,000, right? I'm going to multiply this by 0.9, assuming economic vacancy. We've delivered 90% of the product to the consumers and 10% returned it. They didn't want it. So 549,000. After all operational expenses, we are left with 30% margins, which is 164,700 bucks. Mm-hmm. Now, since that first $5,000 off the top of the monthly NOI serves as preferred equity, goes back to them, or preferential return goes back to them. So in the last 90 days, that's 15K, right? 5K per month. So we made 149,700 bucks. We're gonna because we've returned 15K back to our client. $74,850 is what this client actually made in the last 90 days if they owned this business, or if any of our listeners owned this business. So 74,850 plus 15,000, $89,850 is the total profit distributions that the client would have made if they owned this business in the last 90 days. So now that's the last 90 days. So that's why I say on average, it's between 8 to 14 months on your initial capital recovery, because since all of this inflows, outflows, all of revenue and expenses are flowing in and out of your WISE account in your LLC, it's up to you whether you want to take all 90,000 you just made and put it into the bucket of your initial capital investment, or you want to put 30K in there and then you want to pay yourself 60K. So it really just depends. It's up to you. You own the business, it's in your account. So this business is selling consumer electronics. I can't show you guys the actual product itself, but it's portable electronics, like a portable vacuum cleaner, because I always have good faith for everyone, but I don't want anyone hacking this store. But in this case, in the last 30 days, this business has generated about 162,582 euros. So let's just say 165,000 bucks. Right. And GPR, top line revenue, same math, right? Multiply by 0.9. So 165,000 times 0.9, 148.5. We're going to multiply by 0.3. We're left with 44,550. We're going to divide that by, subtract 5K because it goes back to you, 39,550. We're going to divide that by 2. So the client would have made 19,000 bucks, about 20,000 plus 5, 25 grand. That's why I always say on average, our profit distributions or passive income that a client makes from a cash flow perspective is 4 to 20,000. 4 is very conservative, usually on the onboarding phase. This is what it looks like at stabilization. Remember, this is in the last 90 days, which is Q1. It's actually the slowest time of the year. We were scaling 2 products with this store. This person had a little bit more working capital. I think they had like 50K or 60K. With the traditional just 30K in working capital, you could expect anywhere between that 15 to 10, $7,000 to $15,000 a month in passive income. So the good thing is, I'm sure you guys see all these red arrows. This is actually not a bad thing at all. This is actually just showing live data, so we can actually test different things, see what's going on. Do we have to pivot here? Do we have to pivot there? If we did, if we don't, regardless, we still generated about $40,000 in sales in the last 7 days. I always advise our clients, no matter how hands-on they want to be, don't log in every day because you're going to go crazy, because it's a very cyclical business. That's what we handle. Just enjoy the ride. And usually the first 1 month is a little bit slower because we're getting it off the ground. With your influx of capital, we're scaling it even faster. And then I would always suggest people to just log on 1 to 2 times a month so they don't freak out. Oh, like it's dropped 20% in sales. It's fine. It's okay. You month over month, maybe you've dropped 1% in total gross volume of sales. So we're looking for longevity here, right? So this is an example of a business. I'll show you guys an example of a P&L statement. The reason why I can legally show you guys this is because, let me move this over here. The reason why I can legally show you guys this business is because this is when we put our own money into the business to get it off the ground. So no one owned this. As you can see, we did not generate any revenue for about 3 days here in the beginning. And remember, this is in January. So just to give you guys a perspective, January. So January is the slowest month of the year, with February, sometimes August. But that's the seasonality, cyclical component of e-commerce. Okay, so 3 days here, not 3,000, 3 days here that we didn't generate revenue. We got a ban here. So this is actually very common during the initial phases. People always want to ask me, oh, what's the risks? This seems too good to be true. There are a ton of risks. There are a ton of risk, and there are a ton of hiccups and bumps on the way, but we handle all of that. Same with an operator. Whenever you're investing into a syndication, there are a ton of fires that the operator has to put out. They just don't tell you about it. They want you to enjoy the ride. So that's how we all operate. So we do have hiccups, just like every traditional vehicle that people allocate capital to. In this case, there was a 3-day ban on our domain. It's very unlikely that domains get banned. But if your domain gets banned, you can replace it within 24 to 48 hours and get a new domain. Now, your Facebook Business Manager could get banned. So your ad account can actually get postponed or suspended because they think you're a robot. You're generating this much revenue immediately within the first 7 days. So you have to reseason the account, get a new pixel. We also have internal reps within Facebook to actually speed up the process for us. But yeah, those are usually the hiccups that come with scaling a business. And we have to basically prove to them within 36 hours. I always say 3-4 days max. It's usually within 24 hours that, hey, we're a real business. We're real people. We're not a robot. We're actually a real company. And then as you can see, we've continued to operate. And on average, in the slowest month of the year, not operating for about 6 days of the month, which is about 20% of the month, close to around there, we still generated about $40,000 in sales, assuming a 90% delivery rate. After all operational expenses, we were left with $34,000 at 43.5% profit margins.
Right.
We were left with about $14,000. Same concept.
Right. So if you put in about 40,000 into this business, then, we're not there yet, but you're only like, this is 1 month. You're literally 1 month into this, and your working capital that you deployed into this business, there's some other things too, because you got salaries, et cetera, but you've already gotten back 13,000 plus euros.
Correct. So if someone owned this business, we would subtract, it's about, let's just say 14,000, just to assume the exchange rate. $14,000 here, subtract 5K goes back to you, and then we divide 9,000 by 2. So that would have been $4,500 plus 5. So you would have made $9,500. And this is the slowest time of the year, and we didn't operate for 6 days of the month.
Right,
so
but then just to clarify, what I'm saying here is that by the time you actually sell the business, this is clearly profitable. I mean, you've already
correct.
returned your own working capital, more than enough to pay the salaries of everybody who worked on the business.
Correct.
Sales, general, administrative, you covered all your costs. You've done well more than that by the time the business is sold. So you're not getting banned anymore at that point, not likely. You've got something that is really operating like a well-oiled machine.
Correct. We do not sell businesses that are not stabilized like this. With your influx of capital, let's say you were to buy a business from us for about 120 plus the 40K in working capital. That's why we have a 30-day onboarding phase, because this probably will happen again. Like your domain gets banned, your Facebook manager gets banned, because they're going to think you're a robot all over again. Because how are you making $2,000 a day in sales? So we have to revamp everything. We have to iron out all the quirks, and those are the fires that we all put out. And that's what, that's why fund managers are so well compensated, because we're the best in the business at actually putting out fires and making sure that our investors are staying profitable, or clients.
Right, awesome.
Excuse me.
Well, a couple of things I want to make sure that I cover. I mean, first of all, the Benjamin Cohen story. So you're a young guy, right? How did you get into this? I think you started, if I'm not mistaken, the sort of conventional route. I mean, you did go to college, you completed your degree, and you've been doing a lot of hustling on the side.
Yes, sir. So I majored in exercise science. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. And then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, kind of like most of us. And I was like, whoa, an LLC, what the hell is that? I can make cash flow. So my whole world blew up, and I graduated a year early because I realized, okay, I need to get into business. I need to get into some sort of a private offering, especially real estate. I fell in love with, I don't know what it is about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It brought me to Grant Cardone, and then Grant Cardone was like my way in, mentally at least. So I graduated a year early, got out of college, and I've never networked like that before. I went to every conference I could think of. I broke into the room, and I got into the room. And I got into private equity. I learned how to underwrite, build financial models, and then on the side, I've been doing this, and now here I am.
Well, okay. Now, one of the things that interests me about you is just the way you raise capital. I mean, you're obviously a very dynamic person, very trustworthy. Trust is something that I get out of the way that you describe the business. You understand the numbers, and that's very important. Whatever the alternative asset you're trying to get into, if it has anything to do with an operating business, I only want to work with people that can do that. But apart from the sort of obvious things, like you got to know your stuff, you got to get out there. What are your capital raising secrets? Somebody who wants to get into capital raising or wants to get better at it, how do you 10x yourself?
That's such a great question. I got this from Grant Cardone like 4 years ago when I first saw his first YouTube video. Find an offer or find the deal or the product, whatever the heck it is you're raising for. Make sure it is such a no-brainer, kind of a mixture of Grant Cardone and Alex Hormozi. Make it as much as a no-brainer as possible, and the money will come. And so work on the offer, work on improving your verbal and communication skills, clean up, carry yourself like a gentleman, be respectful and kind to others. And if you have an offer that actually helps people and change people's lives, organically people will come to you, and the offer and the product speaks for itself, and the vehicle speaks for itself. So it's more just a trust game. Like, hey, I'm here for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Everyone knows what I look like, and I live in Atlanta, so you guys can come find me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to Barcelona in the next 2 months and moving to Spain. But yes, I would say just be yourself, and make sure that you break into the room and work hard, work a lot, and things will come to fruition. If you give as much as you can, everything will come back in abundance. So
I love that. And I think maybe that's what I like the best about capital raising,
yes.
Private equity in general, is that it can be an extraordinary journey of personal growth. Anything you do to communicate better, understand the numbers better, to
Correct.
be more trustworthy, build that integrity, do what you say you're going to do, becoming a better person makes you a better capital raiser.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
All right, awesome. Well, I love this is all about entrepreneurship, this show. So I know you have some other entrepreneurial ventures. Did you want to break into those briefly?
Yeah, so we are starting. Well, I will be starting an equity fund since this is not an asset. I'm in the process of finding a way. Going to have to speak with some attorneys, but in the near future, would like to structure some sort of a fund where I can raise capital and actually be the JV partner for my management company and raise capital and provide the equity for all the businesses. And we are in the process of looking for a partner for building out a debt fund, because underwriting models on most banks and agency lenders, life cos, they're so archaic, they're never going to lend on this. They don't even lend on Airbnb, and Airbnb's been around for like 8 years. So we're looking to build out our own debt fund and using the businesses as collateral. So I would love to have that conversation with people as well if they want to break into that. And I also would be reinvesting my personal profits into real estate. I definitely want to be house flipping in southern Italy and build like an Airbnb REIT in Italy or in Spain, and just own a bunch of real estate everywhere. That'd be great. I would love to do that, and obviously buy companies in the future, traditional private equity, and just be as alternative as possible, not just one thing.
Right. Great. I'm glad you mentioned about lenders not wanting to touch this, or at least directly. I know you've got your own lending arm that can help. You can help your clients.
Right.
But I think that's one of the questions when people think like, hey, it's too good to be true. What's going on? Well, because you can't get lending on it, you're just basically, I think, lack of a better term, just starved for that starting capital, working capital, paying yourself back for the businesses you've made already.
Right.
That their loss is potentially the equity investor's gain, because you can't just go out there and launch hundreds of businesses just because you're borrowing on your current cash flow. Other people, this is the opportunity for the investors to step in and say, okay, fine, I'll provide that. You guys know what you're doing. I'll partner with you, and we'll get these businesses to the next level.
Exactly. Absolutely. And over time, we are building up the intellectual property of the business, and we are building a brand. So eventually, once the brand is more global, more recognized, and we have a loyalty, customer base and social media followings, there are ways where, that can be lent against in the future, but it takes time to build a brand. Obviously, that's the illiquid component of e-commerce. It's the brand appreciation. Short term, you're buying into cash flow, which is the liquid, hefty distributions that you're being compensated for as we wait for the brand to be seasoned.
All right, awesome. Now, I feel like we could go into a second hour, because you're just amazing, and I love that entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, I just wish more young people would get into it. I know I wish that I would have started a whole lot earlier. I did a lot of exciting things in my life, including becoming a bioscientist. But I got to say, there's nothing like being the captain of your own ship. And look at all the things you've got going. And when I ask you about entrepreneurial ventures, I mean, you're just building out everything around this. That's what I love about entrepreneurship, is that whatever you're doing, there's a way to 10x it with the proper vision.
Yes, I definitely want to. I'm not the captain of this ship of the management company. My partners, Dom and Frankie, are the founders, and they've been bootstrapping this along with my other partners, Shane and Connor, which I couldn't ask for a better team. We all have the same mission, vision, and values. So it's definitely all of our morals are aligned correctly, both personally and from business. So I just want to say that. Now the equity fund, debt fund, all that other stuff will be my own. But in the short term, I'm just a conduit of of the offer that we have to help people change their lives, and because everyone deserves a source of passive income, I believe.
Right.
And I'm just the messenger.
Well, fair enough. And I'm glad you mentioned your partners, but I see this as a very entrepreneurial business. I mean, after all,
Yes,
you
sir.
are building companies, launching them, and then you're figuring out what to build around that. So that is super awesome. So I understand we talked ahead of time. You said you had a question that you might like to ask me.
Mind me, George, is
Okay. Maybe we'll edit this out, but what you answered when you signed up was about synergies, capital raising, etc. So I think we covered the synergies. And then as far as capital raising, I can tell you what I've learned. I've not done
Please.
as well as you have in the time you've
Oh,
done it,
please.
but I'll tell you what I've learned is to just get out there. There's
Right.
many ways you can do it. I mean, you can go on other people's podcasts. You can have your own podcast.
Right.
I have in-person events. I think that's very important. People really need to meet you before they're going to put the check down.
Absolutely.
And it's helpful if you can be out there and see and meet and greet as many people in person, in the flesh. So for me, it's just about getting out there. And again, you've got to have the track record. And I'm trying to think of something that you haven't already mentioned. So I guess I'll talk about the track record. You mentioned about the syndicator putting their hand on the stove first. And I love that analogy. So yeah, you got to reach out there, show that, hey, look, I've managed this class of asset before. It's not something completely new to me. And when I'm asking you to partner with me, I've got my own skin in the game. So those sorts of things, I think, really resonate with people. Well, anyway, if I could keep you just for a couple more minutes, I would like to ask you my rapid fire questions, if you wouldn't mind. All right. So I call this the 7. These are the questions I ask on every show. All right. You ready?
Shoot.
All right. If you could be known for only one thing, what would it be?
Retiring my mom before 25.
What is the greatest lesson in leadership that you have learned through entrepreneurship?
Walk in humility and always be a learner, because you never know everything.
What personal characteristic has been most pivotal to your success?
Wow, that's a good one. Personal characteristic has been relentlessness, persistence.
Love it. Okay. Take a nod to the randomness in the universe. Let me know when to stop cutting this deck. This question can be like literally anything.
Stop.
All right. Top question. Have you ever bought anything from a TV infomercial?
I think I bought a while ago when I was in college. Yeah, I did. When I was in college, I bought like a protein powder commercial or whatever. It was like a mixed green protein. It sucked. Never doing that again.
Okay. But to be clear, the products you sell are like 10,000 times better than TV commercial stuff.
Correct.
All right. I just love it. I swear that's it. I didn't stack the deck. All right. So name a book that's helped to forge you as a leader or as an entrepreneur, and why?
A book? Actually, this one right here, Blue Ocean Strategy. I don't know if anyone has ever read this one. It's a great book. It's more centered around how to create an uncontested, I guess, marketplace in the industry that you're in, and making sure your competition is irrelevant. That with a mixture of, I'm not great about this. I need to get better at it, but a mixture of the Bible, which has been great. I'm not super religious. I'm definitely learning to get better at it, but there are some definite components of a mixture of that book and the Bible that has helped me be more centered, personally, mentally, professionally, in every aspect.
Can you describe a failure or misstep and what it taught you?
Oh, failure or misstep. I started an Airbnb arbitrage business when I was in college. I raised about $400K from a couple investors, and I furnished an Airbnb, like 6 apartments in Charlotte. I thought I was going to be a millionaire and have all this stuff when I was 21. Very labor intensive, and I exited the business. And it was definitely a run for my money. I learned a lot. So it wasn't a failure. It was just maybe a great learning lesson. Everyone's made their money back, so it was great. But it was my first time doing it, so I learned a lot. Now, second one, personally, I'd say I had an interesting relationship when I was in college. Got my heart broken, kind of like most of us have at least once in our life, and learned a lot in that sense. I learned a lot about who I didn't want to be, what I need to improve on personally, and how that's going to transcend into the man I want to be for the rest of my life.
Can you give us a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs?
I would say humility. I know it's very cliche. I no matter how much money one person makes, no one's really better than anyone else. It's all just perspective. And to walk in humility and always just try to be a learner and be as much value as possible. I mentioned this earlier. Give as much as you can for free, and everything will come back in abundance. It's just the law of the universe. And either in the forms of friendships, value, finance, or just family. So.
All right, great. And then just one last, we have to make sure that our listeners know how to reach out to you. So how do you reach Benjamin Cohen?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So Benjamin B. Cohen, or just Benjamin Cohen. I am wearing a suit, and I look like I'm 15 in my picture. So that was last year, so don't laugh at me. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I follow George. So if you guys follow George, you can look me up on George feed. And you can email me at bcb, so B as in boy, C as in Charlie, B again, so bcbequity @gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Benjamin. This has been an outstanding interview. I hope that people listen to it to the end because there is just so much power-packed information here about what you're able to do for investors. And truly, I think for many people, a very new asset class. So thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience.
Thank you so much.
All right.